Hey, I'm Trey, and this is my channel. I have two crazy stories for you. The first is about a man who dedicated his life to causing pain and misery. The second is about a man who had a thirst for taking other men's manhood. Or I should say other guys' manhood. Both endings were crazy, so you might want to just stick around till the end. But before we get started, you can hit the like button, subscribe, and also the notification button, so you can get reminded of new content that I upload at least 3 times a week. So if you're ready, let's get started. Pedrorosa Di Concetto. He was born in Brazil. No birth date was provided due to the lack of public records available. Also, no youth or family dynamic information was also available. In April of 1904, an adult man armed with a bayonet walked into the Belém train station in Brazil. A bayonet is a long knife that usually connects to a rifle. He boarded the train along with an unnamed associate of his. When the train accelerated at top speed, and for no apparent reason, that armed man with the bayonet pushed his associate off the train, which ensured his death. That killer was Pedro. Pedro then got off the train at the next station without any destination. Pedro just decided to walk to a relative's house unannounced, and whom he hadn't spoken with in years. Ambroso Gomez, who was a relative of Pedro, had a strained relationship with him, but not to the intense enough to warrant what was about to happen to him. Pedro walked to Gomez's home with the intention of killing him. Upon his arrival, Pedro beat and stabbed Gomez several times, leaving him for dead. Fortunately, Gomez survived. Pedro then turned his attention to his stepmother, Maria Di Concetto, and savagely beat her just for being present. Pedro then left and turned to another nearby town and began walking. Pedro attacked everyone he came in contact with. Pedro headed to the local train station and stabbed a stranger by the name of Joe Oliveira to death and left his body in a ditch on the long side of the road. Pedro continued onward and encountered a woman by the name of Serafina Maria. She had been walking alone, just minding her own business, when he attacked and stabbed her, but she survived. Pedro continued on his journey and encountered a local farmer by the name of Pedrorosa Amaral, whom he stabbed to death for no reason. Never met this man before, didn't have 2 words with each other. The police were notified and did a grid search because they heard about all the havoc that was going on in the local towns. Pedro was found by the police hiding in the bushes. One of Pedro's earlier victims died from complications 5 days later after she had been stabbed. Pedro was arrested and confined to a psychiatric ward of a mental hospital. During his confinement, Pedro got into a fight with another inmate by the name of Joan Jr. Pedro killed Joan Jr. by bludgeoning him to death with an unknown weapon. Get this. After Pedro killed Jr., an unnamed guard walked up and just tried to calm him down. Hey, Pedro, it's not worth it. Just calm down. Pedro killed that guard in an undisclosed manner. It was alleged that Pedro killed a family of 12 before he was apprehended by the police, but no information was available on that incident. Pedro died in the psychiatric hospital in 1919. Luis Bayou was born in Brazil. This was in June of 1939. Luis was a farmer who helped maintain his family's farm, along with his brother Joel. Their parents both died in an automobile accident, which caused a rift between the 2 brothers over the land. A fight broke out between them where Joel struck Luis in the head with a hammer in an attempt to kill his brother over their land. Luis in turn got a gun, shot Joel in the eye, in the leg, and also in the arm. Fortunately, Joel survived, and Joel kept ownership of the farm. I guess he won the argument. Luis then moved to his uncle Julio's farm and helped him work the land. Luis married a female farmhand. A few years later, his wife divorced him for being so abusive to her. In 1974, Luis moved and met a woman by the name of Maria Zarpellon, who was a widow and mother of 17 children. That's a lot of children. Maria was financially well off due to her deceased husband leaving a large farm for her and her family to maintain and make money off of. Maria had invited Louis to come work for her because she heard of his good farm hands. Louis developed a close relationship with Francisco, who was Maria's son. He was only 12 years old. This relationship spawned curiosity from all the other siblings, the local minister, and also Francisco's teacher, due to Louis and Francisco regularly going off into the woods together for several hours at a time, alone. And also, Louis would act possessive over Francisco from time to time, which caused people to question their relationship. People could not understand why this grown man was so interested in a young child whom he had nothing in common with. The family had prepared for Francisco to be sent off to a Catholic church-ran school in order to dissolve the relationship that Francisco had with Louis. The following day, Francisco was sent by horseback to run an errand for his mother. Louis came and told Maria that he was leaving the farm because he found a better paying job, but he wanted to leave her son Francisco some money before he left. So she told him where he went and when he'd be back. Louis then left, and she hadn't seen him since. Several hours had passed without a sign from her son, so Maria began to worry. The journey should not have taken more than about an hour by horseback. Francisco had not returned from the errand, and he could not be found. The next day, some relatives told Maria that Francisco was seen with Louis on the day Francisco had not returned home. One of Francisco's brothers found Francisco's horse trotting along the road with a blood-covered horse seat. The police was notified and the community did a search of the area for Francisco. Check this out. Francisco was found dead 2 days later in a chapel garden. The body was wrapped in bean cloths and was brutalized. Hadn't heard the best yet. The coroner report states that Francisco's body had shown signs of being sodomized with a wooden object, and, mind you, the victim's penis was cut off and removed. It was also believed that the murderer had sexually assaulted Francisco before actually killing him. The cause of death was due to a stab wound to the neck directly into the jugular vein, which caused Francisco to die. From this moment on, Louis was nicknamed the Monster of Ekram by the people of the community. Louis was arrested for Francisco's murder and found guilty. Due to the brutality of the event, a psychiatric evaluation was completed and it was determined that Louis was schizophrenic. You think? Louis was sentenced to only 4 years and 7 months in prison for this. While in prison, Louis was a model prisoner. He worked in the prison garden and was a trustee by the prison staff. Louis was also able to work outside of the prison on local farms, but he would have to return at the end of the day. One day, January 1980, Louis did not return from working at the local farm to the prison. And the prison staff didn't alert anybody of Louis's escape. They took no action to recapture him. It took 23 days before the media learned of Louis's escape and they notified the public. Then it was that caused the police to actually start looking for this man. Several people noticed Louis walking through several different communities barefooted, wearing a backpack, looking disheveled, with a crazy look on his face, like walking around like a caveman. On February the 12th, 1980, Jandir Caruso, he was only 12 years old, was sent on an errand by his mother and father, and he had not returned. His body was found the following afternoon. The body was buried upside down with a machete nearby, and the autopsy found that Caruso's anal cavity was ruptured and his penis was cut off and also removed. The police were now looking for Louis as the killer. Louis had made his way to the next village where he committed 2 more murders. Gelson Ribeiro and Paulo Grando, 2 8-year-old boys who were out herding cattle. The boys had not returned home. The parents had went out looking for them, and their bodies were located the following day. The boys' bodies were also brutalized. Both were sodomized, and both had their penises cut off and removed. In another nearby village, Lewis attempted to murder another child, an 11-year-old boy by the name of Lindomir Trulia. He was chased by Lewis, but he managed to escape and get to his father for safety. Lewis doubled back to the prison farm and stole 2 prison guard guns, a prison guard outfit, and also some ammunition to go with the guns. That's great. On February the 21st of 1980, Lewis was observed by police at a local restaurant. Guess he was hungry. The police opened fire and missed him. The police chief was able to subdue Lewis after a hand-to-hand fight between him. Lewis was arrested and taken to the military barracks. Lewis was transported to a psychiatric hospital, and there he was remanded for 5 more months until his escape again. Lewis was never seen or located again. It was believed that Lewis fled to Panama, Uruguay, or Paraguay. Pick one. Trial was held for Lewis in absentia, where he was found guilty. Better late than never. Well, I hope you enjoyed these stories. If so, please hit the like button, subscribe, and also a notification button so you can get reminded of new content that I upload at least 3 times a week. God bless you and stay safe.